It's really helpful to see so many different entities, industries, government agencies, et cetera, kind of moving in the same direction. And we have a strong interest in this topic on use of bio-based materials at Ford. I wanted to kind of review kind of where we've been, where we're going with our utilization of bio-based materials, and hopefully you will find this interesting while still enjoying your lunch. So, let's see. So Ford has a very long history related to the use, particularly of soybean. Can I go here now? Really paved the way in terms of the interest in soybean. He really wanted to make that connection between industry and farmers. And so I believe it was as of 1937, Ford was using something like 300,000 pounds of soybean oil in our automotive paints or enamels at that time. He also produced a soy car in the late 30s, early 1940s. There were 14 body panels that were soybean-based composites, plastic composites, on that vehicle. I wish that vehicle was still around today. I'd love to see it. Certainly no corrosion on that vehicle, right? Or at least not those parts. Unfortunately, it was destroyed, but I'm hoping, but it's good to have that history. And it kind of is, the use of bio-based materials is kind of in our DNA at Ford. We still have a very strong influence from the Ford family in our company, and I think we all feel that and want to maintain that history. And certainly Bill Ford Jr., who's our CEO, really does a nice job of continuing to support these efforts. So that was our past. I've heard several references to sustainability reports, and certainly Ford's no different. We have our sustainability report that also came out recently. It's a great opportunity to review where we've been and what our successes were over the past year, but also to state our goals for the future. And I just wanted to review what some of our aspirational goals are. Ford Motor Company supports the CO2 reductions that are consistent with the Paris Climate Accord. We want to reduce or eliminate our air emissions. We want to eliminate materials going to waste, to landfill. We are looking to eliminate single-use plastics in our facilities by 2030. We want to have freshwater use only for human consumption. Otherwise, we're using recycled water in our facilities. And most importantly, for this particular audience, we have stated the goal that we want to only use recycled and renewable materials on our vehicles moving forward in the future. I still have a ways to go getting there, but we've stated that goal, and that's where we are really moving quickly towards. Related to our bio-based technologies, I also wanted to comment on fuel economy. That's a very big issue at Ford. We're always trying to reduce our consumption of fuel. And so we have several technologies that I wanted to touch upon. For our traditional combustion engines, we're looking at EcoBoost and advanced fuel injection, as well as reducing vehicle weight. Biofuels, I think it's all of our F-Series, our Transit vans, and our Escape are all compatible with biofuels. That could be, soybean oil-based, rapeseed oil, et cetera. But we're also moving towards next generation biofuels that are from cellulose, so the stems and the leaves of plants. So that's one of our goals. And then electric vehicles. I'm sure you've all heard Ford's position on electric vehicles. We're moving forward quickly with increasing the number that we are producing. Lightweight materials are a big portion of that because electric vehicles to improve the range, we need to reduce the weight of the vehicle. So we're always looking for lighter materials. Another big point in our sustainability report was the use of LCA, or life cycle analysis. We are looking at every step of the way from cradle to grave of how our materials are produced through end of life, and trying to identify materials and processes that will minimize our environmental impact. So we are extensively using LCA. And then sustainable materials, as I mentioned, we're focusing on recycled and renewable sourcing. So I'm sure you're all familiar with life cycle analysis. It's just an analytical tool that we're using. We believe that we can get to a point of 95% of our vehicles by weight can be recovered, recycled, reused, utilizing this kind of analysis. So on the left-hand side, you see mining ores or raw material carriers, or could be sourcing from biomaterials all the way through end of life. As far as our sustainable materials strategy, so I'm actually in the Ford Research Organization, and so I'm representing a whole team here, working specifically on polymeric materials research, and really we have a big effort on sustainable materials. Let's look at the vehicle itself and what is that vehicle's made of. We have 40,000 parts, 1,000 different materials, 10,000 different compounds that are used on a vehicle. So we really want to take a look at where's the biggest impact. And if you look at the different colors on this vehicle, the blue is the metals that are used on the vehicle. The green is going to be the plastics, the elastomers, and any other plastic component. The red is going to be consumable fluids. I don't know if it's purple-ish, would be electronics, and then kind of the miscellaneous materials at the end. So the plastics and elastomers, composite materials, are really a big portion and provide a great opportunity for us to do further research, and not only just research, but then implementation of the use of recycled and renewable materials. Renewable materials that we've had some success with, I'm sure you all are aware of our soy-based foams being used in seating. We also are looking at rice hulls, or using rice hulls in electrical brackets, in plastic parts. We have cellulose, glass fiber reinforced composites that we're utilizing as well. And wheat straw. Those are kind of the top ones that we're utilizing currently, but we're certainly investigating other materials. And then on the recycled materials, we are using in mirror housings, recycled tires, scrap from T-shirts as in wheel liners and that sort of plastic bottles and wheel liners, et cetera. There we go. Okay. So a common, kind of the buzzword right now is a circular economy. And from a materials perspective, we definitely want to continue to move towards the circular economy. And so again, our goal of utilizing only recycled and renewable plastics in our vehicles. With that, as others have mentioned, there still has to be performance related to that. It has to be as good or superior to what we're currently using today. So that's where the research comes in, that's where the development comes in, and we really need to move in that direction. But we're finding that there's a lot of opportunity, and we're going to continue to push forward in those areas. So let's talk about what these plastics are made of and where we see where are the opportunities for the use of bio-based materials. So in a foam, there's probably about 40 pounds of foam per vehicle. And foams consisting of isocyanate, polyol, and fillers typically. And we really feel at the moment we can utilize bio-based materials to replace some of the polyol, some or all actually of the polyol and the fillers. So we're driving in that direction. Plastics, that's almost 400 pounds per vehicle. So that's a lot of plastics. It's the polymer and the fillers. Our focus right now is on the fillers. And so there's a catalog of materials that we're taking a look at to try to, that are bio-based, to see where the opportunities are in replacing those fillers. And then on the rubber, it's about 20 pounds per vehicle, non-tire. The tire adds a lot more than that, and Bob will get into that. But it's the polymer, the fillers, and the oils. The fillers, we're looking at a variety of different fillers, eggshells, cellulose, tomato peels. There's all sorts of different fillers that we can take a look at there, and then different oils as well. But that kind of, as I go through the presentation, that will kind of explain why our focus has been in the past and continues to be on plastics, because it's just such a large volume of the material that's used on the vehicle. So why do we want to look at bio-based materials? Lightweighting is probably one of the primary reasons why we want to go there. Our testing has indicated that with the use of bio-based materials, we can reduce the weight of a part from 8 to 20%, if not more. Health and wellness, it's something that people don't necessarily think about, but some of the petroleum products, we get some odors, interior air quality in the cabin, and fogging of the materials. I don't know if you've heard about fogging, but you close the windows and get a hot day and you come out and sometimes your windshield is coated with this lovely petroleum-based material. Or the new car smell, not necessarily the healthiest of smells, yes. So we're looking at it from a health and wellness perspective. The other thought is, can we utilize some of these natural fibers for interior components to really create a more soothing, calming environment for the occupants? I've got some samples down here that show natural fibers and plastics. It gives it a really different kind of look. So these are all like the same polymer base, but using different types of natural fibers. So we can really work with our designers and color materials to really start thinking about that interior cabin experience and really enhancing that for the customer, for the occupant. And then green, we really want to reduce our dependence on petroleum products. In the end, the majority of our customers don't really care how we get there. They just really want a nice experience and seamless experience in their vehicle. There will be a handful that will be really focused on the bio component of it, but overall, we want to make sure that we're being a responsible, environmentally responsible company and sourcing these materials in a responsible way, but the customer just wants to have that reliable, calm experience in their vehicles. So, and of course, we are a for-profit company. It has to be low cost, right? We're always looking for cost is very important to us, and so we have to develop materials that are going to be cost efficient. Thank you so much. Okay, so in production and targeted for production soon. From a soy perspective, I mentioned the soy foam that's been in production for quite a number of years now. We're estimating, kind of an accurate estimate actually, but over 31,000 beans per vehicle on soy foam, 510 million soybeans. It's now been produced on over 20 million vehicles, and we see 251 million pounds of CO2 reduction. So there's been great examples of soybean usage here, and so with all of us moving in that direction, it's a great story for soy. So really pleased with that. We've also implemented soy and rubber on the slat pad on the F-150. I'll get to that, a few more details shortly. Cellulose, that's another biomaterial that we've been implementing, using it as armrest reinforcement on the MKZ. And then we also have the cellulose glass fiber console reinforcement on the Continental. Wheat straw, utilizing that in a bin on the current Flex, and that's worked out quite well. And then rice hulls and the electrical brackets of the F-150. So let's talk about soybean oil. This was a project that was supported by the United Soybean Board, so we greatly appreciate that. We were actually able to come up with a formulation for utilizing 40%, replacing 40% of the petroleum oil. with petroleum oil with soybean oil. And so the slat pad is on the leaf spring in the back of the truck. It's a pretty small part, but it's a good start for us to gain some confidence. We found that this particular part actually had longer life in this application, much more durable, and really helped with the NVH on the vehicle. So that's currently in production today. Hybrid composites. This was an industry first, so we actually replaced some of the fiberglass with cellulose. And so what we found is that it performed incredibly well, reduced the weight by 24%, reduced the cost by 13%. Industry first in having this composite, and we didn't have to change the tooling on the part at all, which was fantastic. Tooling is a very big expense for us, and when we have to change because of dimensionals changing because of the material expanding, contracting, that's a big deal. So to be able to just drop this in was great, and so that's going into production now. And I have some examples of these afterwards during the break. Please feel free to come on up and take a look at these. They're kind of fun. Okay, rice hulls. These were electrical brackets for the F-150. That's in production as well, reducing the weight by 14%. Cost neutral, made sense. Eliminated the odors that we were having a problem with, improved the fogging performance. And so currently we're using about 45,000 pounds of rice hulls to produce these parts for the F-150. And then we have, this is a material that we're developing currently, but it's essentially pine, wood pine, that is that's just the waste material from other processes. We're utilizing that, incorporating that into a part for us, and it's actually improving the strength and stiffness of the part. Again, actually also increasing the impact resistance. So no new tools needed in this application as well. Coffee chaff. We all love our coffee, right? And so there's the coffee chaff is kind of what's left over from the bean that's not used in the production of the coffee. We've thought, well, it's a waste stream. Let's see what we can do with it. And sure enough, we've been able to put it into a mirror housing, and it performs great, right? 17% reduction in the weight of the part, 5% reduction in cost, higher heat deflection temperature, higher impact strength, and again, no change in tooling. So these are all, things that just make sense to do, right? And so we're continuing to move forward with these types of examples. Agave. Go the other direction, away from coffee. Now you're in your evening, right? So your agave fiber, that is a strong fiber, right? And we thought, well, there's got to be a use for it. Let's give it a go. And sure enough, we were able to make some parts with the agave fiber. Let's see, we saw improvement in the life cycle analysis. We try to pick materials that are not just based in the U.S. We kind of pick locally. We're a global company, so we're looking at bamboo for our manufacturing facilities in Asia. We're looking at agave for our production facility in Mexico. Where it makes sense. We don't want to be shipping materials all over, so locally sourced is really one of our goals as well. So yeah, we were pretty. I have the example of this part as well up here, minus 14% reduction in weight again. So this helps us to achieve our goals of reducing weight, improving fuel economy, being more sustainable. It's a win-win-win with all of these materials. So we continue to have developments on the horizon. Keep your eyes open for some announcements soon. About additional use of soy in foams. So in this particular case, we've tested the highest bio content, soybean oil content in a foam to date, 30%. It's looking great for durability, under hood applications, which we really didn't expect that it would be able to tolerate the heat, and it is. There's over 3 million air filters that are used on F-Series Transit and Mustang, and so we anticipate that this will be utilized soon. So we have some examples of this as well. And what I'm talking about is this polyurethane seal that goes around the air filter. And then, aspirationally, where do we want to go? Other materials that we want to use. Waiuli, we've taken a look at that as a rubber, natural rubber replacement, or dandelion rubber as well in seals and gaskets. Castor, bamboo. So there's a lot of, actually one of them was kind of interesting. We've gotten currency from the Treasury Department that we've incorporated into plastics. So it's where we're adding money back into the vehicle, right? It's kind of used money, but still, it's kind of fun. So we can have a lot of fun with this as well, and we do. But nothing is off the table. We're looking at sustainable materials, recycled material, waste stream materials. We have collaborations across industries, and that's really important to us. So let's talk about the stakeholders. So part of what I wanted to talk about, or what my title was about, was changing the way we think about how we demand this material. How do we do this? So there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and all of you are stakeholders in this as well. It's the raw material suppliers, semi-finished products, tier 1 suppliers, OEMs, across industries, government agencies, universities. Ford, we work with everyone. We have this, Ford doesn't make any plastic or elastomeric parts. Our suppliers make all of our parts, and we just guide them to meet our specifications and what we're looking for in the part. So we have to reach out to all the supply base, as well as our collaborations with universities and government agencies are key to make sure that we are driving the demand, driving and sharing the knowledge, and really from a Ford perspective, we understand that we have quantities that if we pull, that we can really make a difference in the sourcing and availability. One example here would be the Bioplastic Feedstock Alliance. Ford was a founding member. We work with WWF and 10 leading brands to try to source plant-based PET. So this is not something that anybody could do on their own, but if you get these kinds of collaborations working together and this kind of draw, you can move the technology much more quickly. We have additional partners, and this is just a very, very small list of partners that we have that work with us. And what we have found, these include individual companies, these include IUCRCs, government agencies. So it's really, really important for us to have the conversations, to find ways to work together and come up with new ideas. So the key takeaways, we have to create enthusiasm, and I see so much of that here today, and it's been fantastic to see everyone really fired up about creating this demand. And the younger people in particular that come into the lab, wow, we give them a Biobased project, and they are thrilled. They know it's the right thing to do. They want to do it, and they work really hard. So we need to make sure the business case works. We need to make sure the performance is there. But that's what drives us, and we've had some success. We've been really happy about it. If it fails the first time, don't give up. Recognize the limitations of the material. There's sometimes, some of the natural fibers aren't going to be the best reinforcing materials. You're not going to beat physics sometimes. But but there's other uses of those materials. Partnerships at all levels. So I keep mentioning that over and over again. Supply base, non-competitive industries, government agencies, universities. We have another announcement coming out soon with a non-competitive company who we're working together for sustainable, incorporating sustainable and bio-based materials. And so we're keeping the ear for that. But that one's another really great way to just share information and pull the demand and pull these materials into the vehicle. Committed individuals at all levels. It takes somebody to make that phone call and keep pestering, right? You have to be persistent, and we all have to kind of help each other, especially when things aren't working well. Say, nope, this is the right thing to do, and build each other back up and really drive that demand. And then the sharing of information, sharing of knowledge. We're not in this to create IP. We're in this to do the right thing for the environment, for the customer, for all of our health in terms of clean water, et cetera. So sharing that knowledge in events like this, at different conferences, et cetera, is really important. It improves the sourcing, the availability, and we want to provide initiative for farmers to actually plant the crops. There has to be a reason for them to do that. There has to be a business case for it. And so we have to create that demand. We can't, it's not, they can plant it, and if we're not going to buy it, they're not going to do that again. So yeah, it's very important. The last thing I wanted to mention is manufacturing is changing a bit. And so we have Ford is very strong in manufacturing, but we see additive manufacturing or 3D printing as becoming kind of the next wave of manufacturing, or it's going to complement it. And so I've got some examples here of filament that we've created with bio-based materials. This would be a beer. They're calling it buzzed. Anyway, the beer material, as well as coffee chaff that's being incorporated into the filament. So we anticipate seeing more of that kind of development. So with that, I think that is all I have. And I, again, really appreciate you all listening to me and participating today. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Janice?
Hi, Janice. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
That was so interesting and very inspirational as well. Just a quick question based on curiosity.
Yeah.
Once your team or other teams at Ford demonstrate the applicability of these bio-based materials, how does the company go about deciding which vehicle model a particular material goes into, like an F-150 versus the Edge? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, it's funny because it's all driven by product cycles. So in terms of, it's easiest when we have a new model coming up to incorporate it into the new model, as opposed to incorporating these materials into, midway through a cycle of the vehicle. However, when we have examples where we don't need to change the tooling, then it becomes a little bit easier to do that. But so that definitely goes into the decision making. Sometimes it is related to the what do I want to say? The vehicles that we know are going to have it fits their DNA, let's say, right? So the F-Series is often one that one of our go-to vehicles because it's a big vehicle, but we're always trying to lightweight that vehicle to improve the fuel economy. But it also is utilized by a lot of the people who are farming these materials and sourcing these materials to us. So there's a little bit of PR that goes into it as well, right? So eventually we want to get to a point where it's a no-brainer, and we just put it across all vehicle lines. Once it's proven out on one vehicle line, let's just make it the standard across all vehicle lines.
Janice, I'm Marty Minsmeyer with Cargill. Thanks for your
Yeah.
collaboration slide.
You guys are great too.
on
I'm
the
sorry
phones.
I was thinking about that this morning. I didn't have Cargill's
Oh,
logo
no.
on there.
Appreciate it. I have a question around parts vendors. So as you identify potential bio-based solutions, how does that discussion go with your vendor? Is there objections to using new types of material? Is it a pretty collaborative partnership? How does, with 40,000 parts in a vehicle, you've got a lot of vendors that are supplying you parts.
We do.
How is that relationship when it comes to alternative sourced materials?
Generally, it's interesting because generally suppliers are very open to it. Not always, but I would say the majority are. What's really important in that equation is for us to have our background work done already so that we can hand them an example formulation that's on a non-proprietary part. It's just something that we use to demonstrate the material works or not and say, this is what we're seeing. Now put it into your proprietary formulation and see if you see the same kind of results. The problem that we get into is if we ask them to just go and start using soybean oil and they have no idea, that's kind of unfair, right? So there's the resources at our supply base. There's still some really good researchers going on, but it isn't always our research going on, but it's not always their priority to incorporate sustainable materials. So if we can do some of that background work in our lab to give them a launching point, we tend to have more success.
Good afternoon. Thank you so very much. USDA, Venus Welch White.
Yeah.
So it kind of piggybacks off of what Marty asked. What type of programs or incentives or kind of structure do you have in your supplier diversity kind of pipeline to maybe incorporate rural businesses as well as maybe minority-owned businesses kind of in that space, and how they can kind of maybe merge those to the sustainability aspect, and then possibly how maybe the federal government can get involved to really bring information from a resource perspective. We have a lot of different types of programs that may support kind of advancing them so they can supply you.
Right. No, really good question. And I don't know that I have the totally accurate answer because it's not the area that I work in, but I know we have a lot of programs related to either, I know minority-based sourcing. I believe we have some for rural-based sourcing too, but I would have to double check on that. And certainly we would love some input from the feds.
Okay, in order to stay on time, I'd like to thank Janice for being with us today and for a great presentation, for being a great partner with USB over the years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.